Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Namaste. So good to have all of you here. Got a beautiful group of people both online and here at our community. And maybe you heard there was something unique and even special that was going to happen today. Well, we'll see, but I think there's something we're going to share that is hopefully going to inspire us in some way, I hope. But I want to begin by remembering with all of you something that happened to me, probably 20 years ago. It was at a festival in Mount Shasta called the Wesak Festival. I was speaking there, and at that time, that festival was held in a kind of a big gymnasium. There were really no windows, and if there were, those windows were all kind of blacked out. And there were maybe 2,000 people. It was a very big conference, and they were all in this auditorium, kind of squeezed together. And for about a day and a half before my sharing, they were being led in these very, very deep, very serious meditations. They would, hold on, let me get everybody, make sure you're all muted. Let me mute everybody here. There we go. Okay. These meditations were very deep. I didn't understand them myself. It was like, now we're going to embrace the fifth dimensional portal energy of the quantum platonic field. I didn't make any sense to me. But the energy, everyone was sitting and quiet and very, very serious. And I was with my friend Sharon, and I knew I would be sharing the next day. And I asked her, what am I going to say to these people? I mean, this is such a serious conference. What could I possibly share? She just said, you'll know when the moment is right. So the next day came, and I got up in front of the whole group, and I just looked out and I said, you all are taking this way too serious. And they erupted with laughter. There was like this explosion of joy, because they were given permission to feel and just to be together rather than do serious meditation, whatever it is they were doing. And I never forgot that. And it reminded me that the answer to all our questions is really so very simple. And that answer is always love. Just love. We don't have to do anything more. We don't need to figure anything out. We just need to see as God sees, to love as God loves, and in doing so, to know what God knows. So that being said, most of you know, is this on? Yeah. Most of you know, can you all hear me okay? Okay. Most of you know that I've been working on an animated film. During my anchor hold experience, I teamed up with a wonderful animator who lives in India, because I wanted to tell the story about this love that we're referring to in a new way. Of course, as you all know, I'm kind of into St. Francis. And perhaps my favorite story about St. Francis was in 1219, how he and Brother Illuminato decided to travel into the battle zone where the Crusades were happening, at this great battle in Egypt at a fortress called Damietta. He had this idea that if he could just sit down with the Sultan and share with him the real message of Jesus, or the message of love, that the Sultan would end the war on his own. And of course, everyone thought he was crazy. Even the Pope told him that if he tried to do this, he'd be excommunicated, but he went anyway. It took him 3 different attempts to make it. And finally, when he was finally made it into this fortress of Damietta, he was very surprised to learn that the Sultan was not this demonic, war-mongering leader, but a deeply, deeply spiritual man who wanted peace above all else. Now, this story has been told in many ways. Many books have been written. There's a wonderful film that you would enjoy called The Sultan and the Saint. But there's one part of this story that is to my knowledge, has never been told. It's been alluded to and referred to in certain theological texts. Saint Bonaventure, in one of his first histories of the life of Saint Francis, mentioned this, but no one has ever focused on it. And what I'm referring to is that there was another man in the room. It wasn't just Francis and Illuminato and the Sultan, because the Sultan had with him at the time a great Sufi saint, perhaps the best known and most important Sufi in the world at that time. And his name was Al-Din al-Farisi. And Francis and Illuminato spent 20 days there at this fortress. And I always found myself wondering, what happened during that 20-day period? What did they talk about? What did they learn from each other? What we do know is that Francis's life was forever changed by this encounter with these two Sufis, because Al-Din al-Farisi was the master of the Sultan. So the Sultan was also a Sufi. You know, at this point, a lot of people ask the question, well, what is a Sufi exactly? You know, I actually shared this film with my Franciscan community a couple of days ago. It stirred a lot of controversy because in this film, as you're going to see, Francis is proclaimed almost as being not only a great Christian mystic, but also a great Sufi saint. And many people were saying he's not a Sufi, he was a Christian. So I want to explain my understanding of what it really means to be a Sufi, because we usually just associate Sufism with Islamic Sufism, because that's where it's most commonly seen. But Sufism, it's believed, existed long before Islam, long before Christianity. It's a very, very ancient spiritual path that can be summed up in just one word. Guess what that word is? Love. Sufis are simply people who have left everything behind and given their whole heart, their whole mind, their whole soul to the love of God. And that means also to the love of everyone that they meet. And this is all a Sufi really is. And of course, this was embraced by Islam, but today there are Christian Sufis and Jewish Sufis. It transcends religion, just as every mystical path transcends religion. So my feeling is that when Al-Din al-Farisi and the Sultan met Francis, what they saw in him was a true Sufi, not an Islamic Sufi, but someone whose heart was on fire with love. And this is what a true Sufi really is. And as I said, we don't need to overcomplicate this. We do have such a tendency to try and bring in every sort of intellectual concept and idea that we can, really just to make ourselves feel important, instead of keeping it simple. When Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? He said, you shall love the Lord your God with your whole heart, your whole mind, your whole soul, and your neighbor as yourself. What he was doing is he was saying, people, let's just keep this simple. Just give your heart completely away. Love, love, love. And I think that's the message of this story. So I thought it would be fun today to have a movie premiere and to show, because we finished the 12-minute long short film just a couple of days ago. And I thought with all the people here, we have 107 people here on Zoom and everyone here at Namaste watching it. I thought it would be fun to share this movie with all of you before we send it out to the masses. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring this up now, and I hope you enjoy The Sufi and the Saint. The Sufi and the Saint, a film by James F. Twyman. Saint Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of nature, the lover of animals and all of God's creatures.
an inspiration to millions of people for over 800 years. And here's what you didn't know. Though Francis is arguably the most popular Catholic saint in history, he was also a Sufi master. St. Francis loved to travel, and in 1219 he and Brother Illuminato began the most adventurous and dangerous journey of their lives, traveling over land and by boat to Egypt to meet the Sultan al-Kamil, the greatest leader in the Muslim world. Francis came to share the message of love he knew through Jesus Christ, believing that if he could stir the Sultan's heart, he would finally end the Crusades, which had been fought for over 100 years. The journey was long and hard. It took 3 attempts for the friars to arrive, and when they did, the battle to capture the fortress of Damietta was already underway. The war was terrible, and thousands of soldiers had already been killed, but if the Crusaders were able to defeat the Muslim force at Damietta, taking the rest of Egypt would soon follow, and then the Holy Land itself. When they finally arrived, Francis and Illuminato not only hoped to inspire the peace of Christ in the hearts of the Muslims they would meet, but in the Crusaders as well. Cardinal Pelagius, who was the papal delegate sent to defeat the Muslim army, had no intention of agreeing to a peaceful treaty with the Sultan. Offers of peace were quickly rejected by the prelate. He had only one goal in mind: crushing the enemy. Francis and Illuminato had no choice. If they were going to successfully end the battle, they had to meet the Sultan. Of course, getting into the fortress was extremely dangerous. They would be considered spies and might be killed instantly, and if they made it inside Damietta, they stood a very high chance of losing their heads. But none of that mattered to Francis. He was determined to deliver his message of peace, regardless of the danger. When the Muslim soldiers confronted them, Francis gave them the greeting he had learned: Salam alaikum. The soldiers were confused and had them beaten and bound, then brought them to the Sultan himself. Francis was overjoyed. This was the chance he was hoping for, to share the gospel of love with the so-called enemy. But what Francis found was no fearsome infidel. The Sultan al-Kamil was a deeply spiritual man, and he was curious about the monks who were so determined to meet him. He turned to an older man standing to his left, Fakir al-Din al-Farisi, a Sufi master and the Sultan's advisor. The two men seemed to agree on a course of action. You may preach to the court assembled here, Brother Francis. Tell us about the Master Jesus and his gospel of love. The Quran considers him a great prophet, similar to Muhammad, peace be unto him. And there is more written about his mother Mary in the Quran than even in your Bible. Yes, tell us about your Savior, Brother Francis, and we will gladly listen. St. Francis smiled and stepped forward, and he knelt in front of the Sultan. We are here for one reason, Majesty, and that is to share the love of Jesus with you, a love that is boundless and eternal. Jesus' message was one of peace and forgiveness, not division and war. He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and that is why we have come to you, dear Sultan, to show the path that leads to eternal life, not death. I may seem like a fool coming here, but my heart is overflowing with love, and I wanted to share that love with you and all those assembled here. Maybe that's the answer, the way to end this terrible war. open our hearts and to see each other as brothers, not enemies. Francis looked over at Al-Din al-Farisi and saw a wide smile stretch across the old man's face. He stepped up to Francis, took him by the arm, and lifted him to his feet. Your words are true, Friar. Love is the answer, and we will walk that path with you. Stay with us, and we'll learn from each other the way that leads to peace and the heart of Allah. Francis smiled, then bowed before the Sultan, who seemed deeply moved by the exchange. Then the great Sufi led Francis and Illuminato from the room into the light of day. The next day, Francis was walking through the camp when he heard a marvelous sound, the strangest, most wonderful singing. Then he looked into a tent and saw a great number of men bowing and praying. And in another area, he saw women doing the same. It filled Francis's heart, and he fell to his knees, overwhelmed with devotion. Then, when the prayers ended, he heard someone walk up behind him. He turned and saw Al-Din al-Farisi. It's beautiful, isn't it? Very different from your Christian prayers. The sound moves me to tears. I want to learn as much as I can about your ways, about your prayers, and how you worship God. And I will share my love with you, the love inspired by Jesus, my Lord. I am a Sufi. The Sufis, by one name or another, have existed in the world longer than any religion we know. To be a Sufi means to love God with one's whole heart and to give everything to that divine love. I see the heart of a great Sufi within you, my dear brother. The two men spent most of the day together, and by the time the Sultan joined them, Francis knew that they were bound together as brothers. The Sultan and his master were two of the most devoted people Francis had ever met, and the love of God stirred his soul. 20 days after he and Brother Illuminato arrived at Damietta, Francis prepared to return to the Crusader camp. During his time with his Muslim friends, Francis learned many things, most especially about the Sufi path to God. Al-Din al-Farisi's devotion was greater than that of any man Francis had ever known, and part of him wanted to stay, but he knew it was time to leave. Just then, Francis turned and saw the great Sufi master standing at the door. I see you're leaving us. I pray that the message you bring back to the Cardinal will create an alliance of lasting peace between us. And before you go, dear brother, there's something I want to ask you. I ask this with great humility because I know it's something God has already made true. I would like to transmit my Sufi lineage into your heart. It will be a bond that will last for all eternity, a bond that Allah will never sever. And you will bring this light back to your people so that they may know the path of love through your great devotion. But I'm a Christian and a friar. Will this in some way conflict with my vows? Your vow is to love alone, and the blessing we share can only amplify that great light. Francis nodded and bowed his head, and Al-Din al-Farisi looked into his eyes. Then he put his hands on Francis's heart and prayed in a low voice. Hear me, Allah. Hear me and bless this great lover of you. May his path be blessed, and may he be a great light to all nations. The two men embraced and let the seed of the prayer take root. Moments later, Francis and Illuminato stood before the Sultan one final time. They blessed one another and took their leave. But before he left, Francis looked back at the great Sufi master. I'll be with you forever. Let no man sever this great bond of love. Francis brought the news and the offer of peace to Cardinal Pelagius, but he would not listen to a word. He was determined to destroy the Muslim army, and there was nothing Francis could say to change him. He and Illuminato began their long journey back to Assisi. The time he spent in the Sultan's camp changed Francis forever. The Muslim call to prayer inspired him to promote a similar practice throughout Christendom, the Angelus. And his prayer, the praises of God, echoed the 99 names of God Muslims pray every day. Most of all, Francis never forgot his two brothers, the Sultan al-Kamil and al-Din al-Farisi. From that day on, in his heart, he was a Sufi like them.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's a beautiful story, and in one way or another, it's the story for all of us. You know, one of the discussions within my Franciscan community when people were watching this was, how much liberty did you take in your imagination, imagining this conversation, this meeting? There were those who felt that one needs to be scholarly and stick only with the facts. Well, first of all, how could we possibly know the facts? How could we possibly know what happened during that 2-week period? And does it matter? Because from my perspective, what matters is the lesson. And that lesson, as Francis expressed it, was the willingness to go to the so-called enemy and to see them as his brothers, to love them, to let those walls of separation dissolve. And so it keeps coming back to love. And if we can use our imagination to inspire that, rather than what we think of as scholarly facts that may or may not open the heart at all, if we can use love itself as a way of inspiring that experience that I think Francis did have when he was at the fortress of Damietta, I think we are well served. So to me, that's what this story is really all about. And it's a lesson for all of us to not take ourselves too seriously, as I mentioned from that conference in Mount Shasta, and just to love one another, to have our hearts open, as Francis and al-Din al-Farisi clearly did. So I would love to hear from Vicky and have her expand on any lesson that she felt or heard or learned from this video. Vicky, go right ahead.
Thank you, Jimmy. That was really well done. The music, the script, the animation, but most importantly, the message. And good morning to everybody. And of course, the message is love. And the nature of love is to share itself. So sharing whatever was in their experience both ways had to be the natural next step for both Francis and the Sultan and all the brothers that were there, as well as the Sufi master, El Farisi El Den. Is that his name?
Al-Din al-Farisi.
And look at us now. We are a group of Sufis who have a love of God, and we come from every tradition, many paths, many traditional religions, tradition, non-traditional, it doesn't matter. What we have in common is a love. And all love is that divine love, is God's love. And this is a place to share it. That's how we find ourselves here. And joy in sharing isn't quite so serious. It's much freer than serious. It's free. It's free, and it gives. And I just love this film. I watched it several times. It did bring tears to my eyes. How simple this can be, and how if there's just 100 here right now, if we just live in love and relate to everyone with the giving of love without trying to expect anything back, that's how this extends freely right throughout time and space and the whole collective mind that we share. So I love this. I'm remembering when I'm at Namaste, one of my favorite things is to watch Augustine work, your gardener, because
In there?
right and I've always felt.
Hold on one second. Augustine.
Oh, thank you. Son,
Augustine, come over. We're talking about you. So this is Augustine. This is Augustine. So we should honor, he is such a great example of everything that we talk about here, because he just goes around spreading seeds of love everywhere he goes. And we love him so much. So why don't we send him some love by toning his name, Augustine. Augustine. Yay. There's St. Francis right there. Go ahead, Vicki.
thank you, Jimmy, because for years, one of the games I play is wherever I am, walk down the street and spot the people who are in love with God. And I'm telling you, just like you can see it in Augustine, Augustine was one of the first brothers that I met when I came to Mexico the first time. And I told him, I don't speak Spanish, but I said, you are Santo Agustino, and thank you. Because you can tell with someone walking down the street, you can see in their walk, in their presence, their grace. It does emanate. It's almost like the game I play is that I see this trail of light and flowers following someone, and you can see whether it's a holy man or not. I was on a plane once, and there was a priest, and not all priests are quite so free. But this priest, I said, Father, how's God? And and immediately it just opened up, and he has an orphanage in Lebanon, and we became good friends. And before it was over, we had the whole plane singing because of his name was Samuel, because of Father Samuel. But that's what happens. Love explodes into sharing, and the denominations and the language doesn't matter. So I don't know. It's a game I still play. I love to look and see where is the trail of joy and flowers and light and sparkles following a brother that I might pass in the street. So we are the heart of love, and that's why we're here. We need to be here now to bring in this full time of love. The fear may fall away, not because we fight it or reason against it, just because we move, breathe, and give in love. Thanks, Jimmy. I love that. That's a spectacular film. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. And you have always been a Christ spotter and a love spotter. And yeah, because that's the path. What you just expressed is the path. Just follow that. Just keep loving, keep seeing it everywhere. It really is so simple. So Teddy, what would you like to share?
Well, I was watching. I have something I want to add to what Vicki was saying in a minute, though. So I like the idea of because I know a little bit about this part, when he said, I want to transmit this to you because I understand, transmission and how it works beyond words and just as, pure energy or pure love. And, that's sort of the way the academy was. There would be a bit of talking and then there'd be just transmission where people just, joined in energy, joined in love, and went beyond space and time in that way. So I like the idea that he said that. Like, I just want to transmit this to you. And it sort of harkened back because the last few days, a lot of people, a lot of the old guys from the academy are showing up somehow. Christopher and Steph and all these guys. And it's like, old home week every place I go these days. And it all is based on, our experience of love and our decision to let Jesus be the master and us be the teacher, and us be the students and learn, and then spread what we get from him. Um, and the other thing I wanted to say is, Vicky, as everybody knows, is the answer herself. So she seldom has any questions, but she did have a question about the film. Why are Francis and Damiano bald?
Oh, in the middle.
Because that's what they did. They would shave the top of their head.
That's what I said.
Who said that?
It's called a tonsure.
That's what I said. I said they shaved their head. She said they didn't have razors in those days.
They had knives.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, it's like opening your crown chakra.
Exactly. It's like opening the crown chakra. Rid of anything in the way.
That was like the question that a child would ask. I love it, Vicky. Why are they bald? Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Teddy.
Thanks, Jimmy.
I'm just so grateful to both of you, and I love being able just to bounce these things in different directions, and we're all going to hear it from a different angle. But the angle, or maybe we could just say the ball, is always love. It can come at us from different angles, but the answer is always love. And it's true that Vicky lives in the answer and not the question. So thanks to both of you.